Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to another very special edition of Substack Live with Zev Shalev here from narrative.org and Olga Lautman from Unmasking Russia, and also the Kremlin Files, and also her brilliant Trump tyranny tracker. Hey, Olga, we just sat through a nauseating couple of hours. What are
Oh,
your thoughts?
well, I'm used to propaganda because I have to watch Russian TV. And I have to say that this was very much in line with what I hear there. I mean, it's the
Mhm.
same propaganda, the same lies, the same length. Putin loves to talk. Although I
Thing
think
is,
he had the competitor in Trump because I think Trump outtalks him. But
2 hours
it
is a
was
very
just
long
all
speech.
lies.
Very long speech. I mean, talk about dictators who like to waffle, waffle, waffle. I mean, he just did that endlessly. And you're right. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but all lies. And so many of them. I just try to keep a list of the stuff. And, almost every claim that he made was completely wrong. I mean, it's not just some of it, but like stuff we said about the worst inflation in 48 years. We've not had the worst inflation in 48 years. The worst inflation in 48 years was about 30%. And it happened way back in 1778, if you're asking, thinking about the question. In reality, the most inflation we've had in the recent past was in 1980, around 14%. And really, during the Biden years, it really only peaked at about 9.1%. So not the worst inflation at all. And it's just another one of these complete exaggerations. And of course, inflation was all due to his first term policies. So, just complete nonsense there. I wanted to get your thoughts on Ukraine because we had anticipated something more of an agreement, and that also didn't come through. He's teasing all day that he had some sort of deal with Zelensky. That was not the case. Zelensky basically sent in the same letter that he tweeted out this morning saying, "Hey, we'll talk," but there was no deal. So again, nonsense. And then he admits at the end that the only people he did talk to in the time since he spoke to Zelensky is the Russians, who says are ready for peace. Well, they're not ready for peace, obviously, or they would not be at war. But they could just stop fighting. But the fact that the president has again admitted at the end of a major address to Congress that his priority is to communicate not with Ukraine, not with our allies, but with Vladimir Putin and Russia, and just it just tells you what we've all been seeing for the last few days since Friday. This is a puppet administration, and it belongs entirely to Vladimir Putin and the Russians, and they should be treated like that. Honestly, I can't believe the respect that he got from members of his party on Congress. It's just embarrassing for them.
Absolutely. And look, there is no deal. I'll fact check. I didn't have a chance to fact check, but I'll fact check if even there was a letter sent, because I didn't read anything in Ukrainian press earlier. We'll see, by the time Ukraine wakes up, if there was indeed a letter
There
sent.
was a tweet.
But
There was a tweet that Volodymyr Zelensky's put out earlier. That's what he
yes,
basically
yeah,
referred to.
maybe that's the letter. I'm not sure.
I
But
don't think he got a letter.
look, again, I made it very clear Trump's priority is to hand Ukraine to Russia. This
Mm.
is all he's doing. This is his only priority, and at the same time to steal minerals from Ukraine for him and potentially Russia. That's the only priority. He wants to hand Ukraine to Russia. The fury you saw over the past few days of Zelensky not coming to the table, as he said, and not wanting a ceasefire. That fury is because he expected Ukraine to roll over and Zelensky to just, surrender. And I keep repeating, if Zelensky wants to surrender Ukraine, he can go to Moscow and have a meeting with them. He doesn't need a cutout via Trump to go and surrender to, Russia. So, I don't see any deal as far as, Putin wants peace. Get the F out of Ukraine.
Yeah.
He can right this minute say withdraw all his troops, get out of Ukraine, and there you go. There's the peace. Ukrainians aren't fighting inside of Russia. It is Russia that invaded Ukraine 11 years ago.
But it is also true that Ukrainians are fighting inside of Russia. I mean,
Well,
it's
now
quite simple.
they
Now,
are
now
in
they are, yeah.
Kursk. Yeah,
But
in Kursk. But trust me, if they saw withdrawal of Russian troops, they'd be back home in a minute. They don't want
yeah,
any piece of Russia. They don't even want an inch of Russia. And frankly, if Russia ever got the hell out, Ukrainians would build the best border security you could imagine,
in
from a
fact,
wall to moats and
yeah.
alligators and anything to keep the damn Russians out. But they don't want Russia.
Yeah.
You
In
know.
fact, one of the things that Trump did by pausing all the aid that he has offered to Ukraine, if it continues, if this actual pause continues beyond a few days or weeks, what it'll mean is that those particular troops in Kursk that are currently in Russia doing their offensive operations, they will be the most at risk because those are the ones that are protected by the American intelligence services and the missile capability. So it's really a shame. It's really a shame that we've been dealing with Zelensky in the way we have. It's horrendous for the United States that this has happened, and he has done what he had to do. He's gone and found better, more reliable partners in Europe, and America's going to be left out in the cold. And it's unfortunate because as with the tariffs against Canada and Mexico, no one wants that for America. But at the end of the day, these policies are so ridiculous. They're going to lead to so much hardship for the average American, and none of it is worth it. All we're doing is Putin's handiwork, trying to get Putin a breakup of NATO, trying to get and alliances that are very important to the United States, like the ones with Canada and the United States and Mexico, broken. What's the point of all of that, really? What do we get out of that? Nothing. Nothing at the end of the day.
No, and I have to say, look, he came into office. His first agenda was to fight with our allies, to threaten an invasion into Ukraine, into Canada. I mean, come on, the nicest people, the nicest neighbor. We've never had problems with them, and this was his. But why? Because Canada is a NATO member. Next, Denmark, and again today he threatened,
Again,
oh, Denmark will be ours one way or another. He sounds like Putin. I mean, this is what Putin says about, the Baltics and about Ukraine and about other former Soviet hostages. Again, why? Because it is, defended by NATO. Today, a poll came out in France. 73% do not see the US as a reliable ally. I mean, these are our allies. In Britain right now, there is absolute rage over what Vance said about, oh, some insignificant country, meaning Britain, is going to send some 20,000 troops. Why are you attacking Britain, also one of our closest allies? So, I mean, they are attacking every single U.S. traditional ally and at the same time, currying favor. I mean, to the point that they're inviting Russian spies back in. I mean, there was a very good CNN article, and finally they actually called it for what it is, that, the Russians are looking to reestablish their spy networks inside of the US with the embassy openings and potential handing back of the property that Obama seized.
you
So, I mean, the whole thing, and someone mentioned he lied about the numbers as far as the aid. US gave 180 billion of aid, and a good percentage of that aid stayed inside of the US to build new military weapons as the US military sent older stockpiles to Ukraine. So that money wasn't handed to Ukraine, and just go wild. It was via weapons. And a lot of the weapons came back in US in plants across red states that,
actual jobs,
increased
actual real
jobs.
jobs. Yeah.
Yep.
And now that he's
And
stopping the
Europe.
aid, that's those jobs are going to go. So in addition to all the cuts that he's doing with the federal government, in addition with all the tariffs that are going to cost jobs, now he's going to stop all the aid production to Ukraine with all the weapons productions. Well, that's also going to cost jobs. The economy can only sustain so many declines, and that's why we've seen the Atlanta Fed already come out with projections of a 2.8 GDP drop in this quarter. That's a 6% drop from where it was. It was originally a 2.8 positive. Now it's going to be a 2.8 negative. And you add to that all these other things that he's going to do, like stopping the the arms production, and you're just handing, handing Putin everything he wants: weaker alliances, a weak American economy, whatever that's going to lead to, social decay, race riots, you name it. You just hand it over to Putin all his wildest dreams and makes us completely incapable of doing anything in the future. And here's the thing that gets me: do they actually think Putin's going to come through with any of his promises?
No.
Do they think Putin is going to be there for Donald Trump at the end when he's destroyed
Russia's
America?
main
No.
goal is to destroy America. This is the
Yeah.
goal from the Soviet Union. And during the Soviet Union, all the propaganda was about how evil and dangerous the US. The propaganda never shifted. I mean, maybe temporarily after the collapse of the Soviet Union,
Mm.
but the propaganda has been there forever. This is their main goal. They want the US overturned. They want democracy around the globe overturned. And you mentioned NATO. Elon Musk yesterday, with his movement of Republican congressmen, are calling for US to exit NATO. This is next. And I mean, at this point, frankly, with the military aid being cut, they also announced that intelligence sharing would be cut, with Ukraine. And to tell you the truth, that brings me comfort, because at this point, you have US people under this regime inside of Ukraine with intelligence, collecting intelligence from Ukrainians that they could be passing right to Moscow. I mean, why is it since Trump came into office, a British ship carrying weapons to Ukraine was attacked on its way to Ukraine yesterday? Why did that happen then? How did the Russians know that this ship was moving towards Ukraine with weapons? And then how come we never heard of an incident like this over the past 3 years since the full scale invasion? So, frankly, I feel more comfortable, and I don't think any normal ally of ours would share information with Tulsi Gabbard as head of the, intelligence, with Trump as head of the US, and frankly, every other Kremlin asset inside, the US government.
No, I mean, there's no reason at all to share information with the United States. In fact, you want to not share information. It's a risk to your own country and the people that he's got in charge.
Or
People like Hex.
disinfo or misinformation.
Yeah,
Hand them
yeah,
false information that you want to get into the hands of
exactly.
your
I mean,
enemy.
Elon Musk is busy raiding our infrastructure, our mainframe infrastructure. You've got Tulsi Gabbard in charge of intelligence. You've got Hexsmith threatening Mexico with invasion. I mean, what kind of nonsense is this? And by the way, all those border claims, all the claims about the number of people that were crossing the border, and not true that he has the lowest rates ever of people crossing the border. It just is not verifiable by any fact that I could find. Yeah, there was it's a lower figure in February, but not the
Well, they have the
lowest
whole
ever.
military there
Yeah.
standing. So, I
Yes,
mean,
but it's not,
which
it's not what he's claiming that it was. These are just complete lies. The things about there being so many octogenarians on these social security rolls, those are lies. There are 78,000 people over 100 years old on the social security rolls right now, and that's how many there are probably in the country. I mean, maybe there's a few more or less, but the majority, all those false figures about there being 120-year-olds and 140-year-olds and 160-year-olds on the social security rolls, complete false, completely fake. There is nothing.
That's lies,
Yeah,
lies, lies,
lies
lies.
like
There's no dead people. I mean, this regime actually created like a whole class of dead people. They vote, they collect social security, they they work in the federal government. It's like apparently we have a whole dead society
it's
who's,
like a
and
ghost
his.
government.
Uh, I'm
It's like the
telling
ghost
you,
state.
first they all voted. Now they're like, working inside the federal government. I mean, these are all absolute lies. Everything he said is lies. And first of all, over the past 6 months before Biden left office, the inflation rate was 2.9%. A healthy inflation rate is 2%.
Yeah.
That is the marker that, countries try to achieve. Um, he is sitting here, he got handed the worst inflation ever. Where?
No.
2.9%. Where? Now, are things cheap? Absolutely not. We have had price increases, obviously, and we actually fared better than the rest of the world after COVID. But I mean, he's today stood there carrying on about the mess he inherited, the tariffs, how they will save us. I mean, on a day that we had two consecutive days with over 1,300 a market point drop. Target coming out and saying within the next few days they're increasing cost on food, which by the way we should continue boycotting Target. um and and you have all the basically like alarm bells across every sector. Gasoline prices are going to go up, and they already went up. I mean, now gasoline in New York is over like 340, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's already gone up. And you have all these like signals, to the point, and reports of stagflation and recession coming.
Yeah.
And this guy stood for an hour carrying on what a great economy he's going to build. Where?
But he's not. I mean,
Where?
the reality,
He's
tariffs
taking, he's pouring fuel on the fire. He's actually
are.
causing a lot of this.
Tariffs are going to increase prices for absolutely everybody on almost everything, and there's just no way two ways about it. It's the very notion of tariffs means you're going to be paying, as much as 25% more on some of these things, maybe 10% in the case of China. But and now he's announced today with some sort of like bravado that reciprocal tariffs are going to be introduced, which means even the rest of the stuff that is going to be increased that hasn't been touched is going to land up being increased because at the end of the day, you can fight this war, but I don't think America is going to be as needed by, say, Canada or Mexico to sell those products. I mean, when you talk about the rare earth that Canada has, and um, sure, Canada will get hurt, but they've got minerals that America really needs. They've got electricity America really needs. Yeah, the car industry is going to be challenged. There's going to be a lot of difficulty, but at the end of the day, we're not going to be seeing the impact on Canadian consumers in the same way that you're seeing going to have the impact on American consumers. They're the ones who are going to suffer the most. And it's just horrendous that he's doing that on top of all these other job losses that he's inflicting on the government by cutting the federal government to the size that he has.
If
And then,
it's only him,
yeah,
Musk.
yeah, that's what I
Who in the
mean.
hell
Musk.
is Musk? Like, we did not vote for him. We didn't elect him. He's there with a bunch of operatives with very questionable backgrounds, be everything between connections to Russia, to, connections to Nazi forums, um, who are basically stealing our information. They know who our kids are. They know where we work, our banking information. They're gutting all the agencies. I mean, Trump, it's not even Trump, it's Musk. Musk is not an elected official for him to, walk into the federal government, steal all our personal information on every single American, decide, that every agency is not needed, and decide to cut it and gut it out. And then on top of it, to steal classified information with interest with Russia and China. I mean, is he selling our information? What is he going to do with our information?
Well, it's probably all gone out the door already. And that data is so valuable to the Chinese and the Russians because they can design their next attacks on the country, their information attacks, their hacking attacks, their cybersecurity attacks. They can all be designed so easily once he has that data. And now he'll know how the entire infrastructure of the US government is operating. That's very good information for Russia and China that they could not get otherwise. And here is the richest man in the world, but an unelected official doing not only that, he's also now going to go after Social Security, cutting at least 50% of the workforce in Social Security. And he got to stand up there today and get, applauded by the president and his party there. This is a guy who's supposedly the smartest guy in the world, but the accounting at the Doge department is so wrong. They keep having to cut the number of receipts that they apparently have saved on. It's gone down to just $8 billion or something like
I
that now.
stand
From
with Canada too.
yeah, so I mean, it's really
I mean, and
fabulous.
and Doge, what is Doge? It's unauthorized. It's a fake agency. I mean, it's a fake agency. Any one of us can create and put letters to an agency, say, oh, this is an agency. It was never authorized by Congress. It was never voted on. It was never vetted. So what is this thing that, is walking through and cutting with these operatives from 19 to 25 years old who are, cutting our government? And stealing our information. It's frankly, this whole timeline is absurd, and you know,
And Congress,
I
the Congress is like giving up the power of the purse. I mean, this stuff that Elon Musk is doing, it doesn't belong in the executive
it's
branch. It
illegal,
belongs in the congressional branch.
and
It
it's
belongs.
illegal.
It's illegal what he's doing, and ultimately, the fact that they all stood there and applauded him today is just so embarrassing for them. These people were elected by their communities, by their districts to represent them in government, and they are not doing their jobs. They're basically allowing this billionaire to do whatever he wants with the spending of the U.S. government, and they're just shirking their responsibility. They're just letting him do that. I've never seen something so Kremlin-y as that tonight. The fact that those people were just applauding lie after lie after lie, applauding this man who's gutting the government, who's illegally stealing our data, and then this president who's basically incompetent, but also just so treasonous, so traitorous, that he's only priority seems to be to speak to Vladimir Putin and the Russians about their intentions for Ukraine, and doesn't even reach out to Vladimir Zelensky to apologize for that embarrassing thing that he put the president of Ukraine through the other day. It's just appalling. At the same time, he's burning all our alliances with the Europeans, burning our alliances with the Canadians and Mexicans. I mean, it's this is what you would do if you were trying to destroy a country. This is what you would do if you're trying to destroy a country. And he's doing it. And Americans are still, to some extent supportive, although his favorability ratings are going down, which is, but you said to me a while ago, Americans are going to have to hurt a little bit. And
Unfortunately, look, for a decade, me and many others have tried to warn, have discussed authoritarianism, what it's like, and Americans, thank God, never had to experience anything like that. There, for the most part, there's freedom here, and you can say what you want, do what you want, and that's it. And unfortunately, being that no one listened and people decided to vote him in, with half of the country supporting him, the only way I believe, and it's going to go one of two ways, the only way I believe that megaism and Trumpism and this whole freaking insanity will be broken is for maximum pain to be put on Americans, which they are doing, because I mean, they're firing veterans, they're firing all the federal government employees, cutting all the contracts. This is all leaking over into the private sector, because then you have private businesses who had contracts with the
exactly.
government, who are now also on the verge of shutting down, and and not even getting paid for services that they have delivered. So unfortunately, you know people, and we've seen nothing yet, trust me. What we've seen, for a lot of people here is shocking. I mean, this is nothing compared to what an authoritarian regime is. And unfortunately, everyone is going to have to experience it, whether it's economic pain, whether it's, being fired for absolutely no reason in mass quantities, whether it's, watching your lawmakers, which will be next, because don't forget, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi, they just all started their positions.
Mm.
Wait a few months, when they start arresting lawmakers for speaking out. You saw the look when Trump looked at the Democrats. I mean, it was pure anger. I mean, if he could have, had them all arrested and right there, he would have. You
And he
know,
just called
um,
Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas, and like
yeah, he's nuts.
from the podium at a State of the Union, in a joint state. Just offensive and
He's
appalling.
disgusting.
It's
But
disgusting.
and then, I mean, you already see the authoritarian tactics, the groundwork being laid. I mean, today, he threatened, and they already started with Columbia University, threatening to arrest people for illegal, threatening to withhold funding from universities for illegal protest. What is an illegal protest? That's embedded in our First Amendment. What
Yeah.
exactly is? And what pretext is he going to use to say today it's anti Semitism, tomorrow it's going to be, oh, these woke people and, these deep state people and whatnot. So, I mean, he's laying the groundwork to use these tactics. And I've been warning in my Trump tyranny
Yeah, yeah.
tracker because I've seen a lot of this. He's using various emergency powers from the 1800s and 1900s for the border. Yes, today it's for the border and for immigration. Guess what? Tomorrow it's going to be for us. So we have to really pay attention and continue pushing back. And hopefully, like to go back to the original point, the more Americans feel, unsafe, insecure, and financially hurt, the more people will wake up and then will, join to stop this because I don't think Americans want a Putin here, or, I mean, you don't want this type of regime here. And now, obviously, Trump is old, but then what happens if he decides to say, you know what, I want my son to be the next president and turn it into a dynasty and just installs him? And you have Republicans going with it. I mean, you have a representative, Ogles, who already, within like 2 weeks of Trump coming back to power, put in legislation to allow him or a president to run a
For
third
third
time
term.
if
I
it's
know.
not two consecutive terms, if they didn't serve. So, I mean, you have a Republican Party that is fully co opted and willing to, basically rip up the Constitution and do illegal things in order to, keep power and for greed and for whatever panic because they're also getting death threats, which is not a healthy system, political system. We shouldn't have one where people make decisions and vote based on, whether they're getting death threats and their kids are being threatened and
Absolutely.
family members. So, I mean,
People have to play this tape out. They have to understand what's going to happen. The suffering is going to continue and get worse. So, if you ever needed to get Social Security, maybe you haven't needed to reach out to them before. Now the waiting time might be 3 hours or 4 hours on the phone. Once they've done these cuts, it's going to be
if
8 hours on the phone, maybe longer and longer. If you have disability, if anyone in your family needs disability or anything like that, you're going to try to reach Social Security. They're not going to be there to answer the phone for you, so you're not going to get your disability. And then what do you do if you're out of work? What are you going to do when all these services are cut and the staff aren't there to answer your phones and you need help from the government? They're not going to be there. When the military is so co-opted and we've sold ourselves in such a way to every single dictator in the world, who is going to come to the aid of America when China or Russia or someone else, North Korea, decides to invade America? Who is going to come to our aid when that happens? Do you think Europe is going to want to do that after we've abandoned Europe, or Canada is going to abandon? Who is going to come and look after America's security from the outside? We need friends just as much as they need us as a friend. And the more we do this, the more we alienate people, which is what he's trying to do, the less support there is going to be for Americans. The world loves Americans. We know this. Everybody loves Americans right now. But they do not like this regime. And this regime, if you play this tape out, they will do what Putin has done to Russia, and they will make everybody hate Americans, and they'll make Americans resent everybody else for it. That's why we don't really have much time. I mean, we can see the signs of they're starting to do. It's not going to take very long for this tape to play out. We've got to move fast and be smart about how we, really start to undermine what this regime is doing, and doing it on a local level. So, finding for your footing, whatever it is. It's time to start thinking about those things right now. This regime in 4 years from now is terrifying.
we can't even wait 4 years, frankly. We need to organize now. People are doing a good job at, going to town halls. Now they order today, to cancel the town halls. So people need to get creative and start bringing the town halls to these representatives who serve them. But frankly, I mean, this is 60 days. And look at how much he has changed to the point, that our allies do not trust us. He is betraying Ukraine. And again, look, I understand Americans, question why are we sending money? And why is this war continuing? Trust me, no one wants this war to end quicker than Ukrainians, who in 3 years have not had one night's sleep. I mean, can you
Yeah.
imagine what kind of psychological terrorism that is when every single night you're being woken up by air raid silence and sleeping in like increments of 2 hours, you know?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, they've
So
not even had like it's a summer. They've not had a spring. They've just been like
no,
in
I
this
was
mode of
there. I couldn't.
fear.
I was there. I couldn't sleep. I mean,
Yeah,
how you call it? You just can't sleep. You are constantly have air raid sirens going off, and then it calms down. Then it goes off, calms down. But still, I mean, the most important thing is sleep. I mean, one of the torture tactics, that governments used, which were illegal, were sleep deprivation. And this is what's happening in Ukraine. And I mean, I can't even begin to tell you the psychological trauma and damage that will be done
sure.
there for kids, for the whole country. So no one wants it to end quicker than Ukraine, but it has to end in normal ways. And to have the United States betray it, I mean, look, the United States and Britain guaranteed, forced Ukraine to give up nuclear weapons. They guaranteed Ukraine its sovereignty, to protect its sovereignty. This was in 1994 under the Budapest
Yeah,
Memorandum. And here we are, and now not only, are we, how you call it, turning around, now we're siding with the enemy. Like we are now the axis of evil.
yeah, we are. We've become the
And we
cheerleader of
think
the axis of
Russia
evil.
is the ally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
someone's more pointing out here that Malley, who's a former SSA commissioner, says that the tax cuts that are happening, the cuts that are happening to Social Security right now, and the budgetary decisions could lead to a system collapse within 30 to 90 days, resulting in potential interruption of benefit payments. This is a story that they're saying comes from Newsweek.
yeah.
I mean, boy, how many people rely on Social Security in this country? How many old, your parents, your aunts, your uncles, how many people rely on this stuff? What's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to them when they're not receiving those important
What
checks
about
every?
Medicaid?
Yeah,
I
Medicaid
mean,
as
this
well.
is part of these tax cuts to hand over, the trillions of dollars
And
to hand over to billionaires and corporations and strip it away from people who rely on Medicaid. And you have, tens of millions of people in this country, including children, who rely on Medicaid. So, I mean, look, they're looking to destroy the regular, hardworking American people to basically create an oligarchy. We already have the main oligarch who is not only stealing all our information, but at the same time scoring every single contract. I mean, at this point, it's going to be, this reminds me in Russia where, an oligarch who supports the regime has like, I'm in charge of this and that and that,
right.
like they,
It's absolutely
are,
correct. And that, by the way, the tax cuts that you mentioned just now that Trump is proposing through this new bill of his only apply to people who earn more than $350,000 a year. So, to your point, it's not you and me that are getting tax cuts. It's the very, very wealthy people in this country are going to get tax cuts, and that's why I'm going to land up with an oligarchy. It's because I don't know, $250,000 is still a lot of money for most people, and there's no ways that a lot of most Americans can never dream of getting that kind of salary. I'd love that kind of salary. I mean, of course, we all would, and yet those are the people who are going to be getting the tax cuts. The people who are reliant on this government through Social Security, they're going to get their services cut, their allowances cut in exchange for that. And by the way, he did mention that he was in favor of cutting tips, overtime, and Social Security taxes. That's bullshit. It's not in his bill. That's just something he's saying. because he needs to say something positive. And again, just a nauseating night. By the way, the speech was really weak. I mean, he was boring. He was dull. All these stupid appearances by people, meaningless appearances. What is this? Give it's a game show or something, giving people rewards for showing up. There's nothing in that speech that was substantive. It was all a bunch of lies and promises that he can't keep. And at the end of the day, it just tells us exactly what he's interested in. It's probably just the ratings. It's all he cared about tonight, and that's it. And he doesn't care about peace in Ukraine. He doesn't care about social security. He doesn't care about the people, about cutting inflation. Price of eggs, you name it. All he cares about is pleasing Putin, the only person he's spoken to in the last few days.
Yeah, continuously.
Yeah. So, anyone else want to comment? And there's lots of good comments here. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. It's been a long night. You got your attorney tracker. I know you're still trying to finish, and I have my and I've got to write a little fact check for tomorrow's narrative.org. Tell everyone again if
I
you want
know. I
to.
I laugh too
Yeah.
with this unelected bureaucrats. I mean, are you
Yes, that was
kidding?
hilarious.
These are federal workers who are making, an average salary. A good, I mean, a government job is good, but I mean that, but not the billionaire who's
The
like,
billionaires somehow allowed to do these things. I mean, never mind. I'm not even sure that Trump really won. Even, and that's the other thing. When he claimed to have this landslide mandate, that's just bullshit. He won by what, 1.6% of the vote, by the popular vote, if that. Some people would question whether he won any of this stuff. But there's no
I,
mandate.
I I made a comment. You had to see the mega attack I came under. I made a comment that more people voted for someone other than Trump than for him.
Yeah,
Oh my God. I it was like nonstop attacks. And I'm like, do these people like not even know basic math? I mean, if the guy got under 50%, if you calculate, who voted for Harris, who voted for third parties, that's more than the people who voted for Trump, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. I
So,
think
I
it's right. It's
mean,
like 30
yeah,
something
no,
percent. Yeah,
the mandate, and I mean, Congress is what, hanging by a seat? The House? I mean,
yeah,
come on, what kind of
yeah.
mandate is that? If they have a mandate, they wouldn't be crying for Democrats to help pass this billionaire, tax cut. They would be able to do it themselves if they had such a mandate. Like, leave
Exactly.
Democrats
The
alone.
Senate would have already approved that bill, and they're not
Yeah.
rushing to approve it because they don't even have that mandate. And already we've
And
seen,
speaking, I want to make one more point.
yeah,
Math and
yeah,
science are the enemy of them. And that's another thing that is like really destroying me. The United States is a known leader in, medicine and science, in research, and the fact they're gutting every single program, whether it's cancer, whether it's Alzheimer's, you name it, they're gutting the research. And I mean, again, this falls into also the private sector because it's universities that are shutting down their programs
yeah.
and institutes. But I mean, do you understand how much damage that's going to be for us to set us back, against all these research, the research on medicine, on diseases? I mean,
And the jobs and the
why
brain
would you
drain.
destroy it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just. I mean, the research is going to be so painful for a lot of people, and every cut that they've done, and all these cuts that he mentioned. I mean, some of them were sounded outlandish, but every single one of the stuff that they've cut at USAID, it had a reason for being. It wasn't just they sound like they're outrageous, but they're all ultimately you know the important things. These things wouldn't get approved
And
unless they
they're
were important.
pennies.
Yeah,
A
and they're pennies.
typical,
They're millions.
an average American pays like 0.2 cents for USAID, AID. I mean, for the whole
Nothing. Yeah,
agency and
and
all their programs. And now we have, because of USAID cut, there's like this news story yesterday and today is that in Congo, there's like some kind of like unknown Ebola-like virus spreading like
yeah.
crazy. Guess what? We don't have anyone there. So,
Normally we'd be on the ground
uh,
with that, but we
and
cut the Ebola
exactly. And
office.
when that person walks into
We,
JFK or LAX airport, guess what? It's going to be spreading here. And why? Because we don't have people there doing the research, and it's going to come to us.
and you've cut the Ebola staff, you've cut all this other stuff, and
Everything.
and who do you leave the Congo to? The Congo is, by the way, the country that
Then
has the
the
most lithium in the
nuclear. I
world.
mean,
Who has the
how do
most
you
lithium in
cut?
the world? the
Yeah, how do you
condor.
cut nuclear? Like people guarding the nuclear supply and maintaining it. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, this is incredible. But we fight on 5 calls a day, like someone said. Resist, bot, use every means you have, arrange town halls, do everything you can to push back against this, because we can slow it down. We are slowing some of the things down, the courts are slowing some of the things down, but we have to be extremely loud. I mean, every Republican should, like there was a town hall the other day. The Republican ran out, and it was like I either Kansas or Kentucky. I always get the two
yeah.
confused, sorry. But the Republican ran out of his own town hall, mid town hall.
Now they're not
This
going to
is
do them anymore.
they need to be shamed for what
Mm.
they are doing. They need to give us answers, and they need to be shamed. And if they don't want to go, have a town hall, arrange a town hall. Someone actually gave a very good suggestion. Arrange a town hall, bring press, and put a chair, empty chair with a picture or cardboard of them, and say, "Here you go."
Great idea.
Our representative doesn't want to be here, so here we have the cardboard, that we have to speak to.
I love that idea. And one seat or two-seat majority is very easy to change, and people know who their representatives are. If they're not representing you well, there are many ways to get rid of them. That's what happens in democracy. Find ways to get them unseated, and let's kill that majority, and that'll change a lot quite quickly on the ground. We should
Yep.
say goodnight, Olga. It's great to see you again. Thanks for being here, because it's so nice
Always.
to have someone to chat to and like get my emotions out and my anger out. So thank you very much. I know everyone already subscribes to your Substack on this feed, but if you haven't, you know where to find Olga at Unmasking Russia, and you can find mine at narrative.org. That's narrativ.org. And thanks very much for being here, everyone. Keep strong, and we'll see you again soon.
Yes. Have a great night, everyone.